This is a load management dialogue presented by PLMA. Here you'll discover practitioner perspectives on flexible energy load management, demand response, distributed energy resources, and managed charging. In today's session, we talk to PLMA member Octopus Energy as they share their experiences working in a variety of energy marketplaces around the world and over the course of the past decade. And now, let's turn over today's presentation to PLMA Executive Committee member Allison Hamilton of NRECA to get this conversation started. You're still muted, Allison.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm Allison Hamilton, and welcome to today's presentation. We're going to be hearing from Kieran Stockforth. He's with Octopus Energy, and he's going to share with us about his managed charging program. It's an international program. If you have a question, please put them in the chat box. I'll be managing the chat box, and we'll try to answer all your questions at the end. Thank you, and I'm going to hand it over to Kieran now.
Hi everyone, I'm Kieran Stockforth. Great to be with you all today. Yes, I am from Octopus Energy, and to prove it, there's multiple sort of pink octopuses in the room that I'm sitting in. So I'll let you sort of see if you can spot them all. Octopus has been very active in building what we believe to be the world's largest smart charging fleet. And at one point last year, I actually went to the PLMA EV Symposium, and I'm really pleased to be with you all today here because the PLMA has shown so much leadership in advancing, smart energy, connected load, and particularly EV smart charging, and really commend them on the work they're doing, and really happy to be here. So I think what was interesting from that symposium last year was really learning more about the US context and seeing the differences between the US and some of the other things that we're working on in the rest of the world. It's funny that EVs are such an interesting technology because the purchasing decision is almost entirely out of the utility's hands. So the utility has almost no control over electric vehicles. They pose a big impact on transmission and distribution. And if you're a deregulated utility, on your utility cost base as well. And then, of course, across the US, there's this patchwork of regulatory frameworks across the different ISOs, regulated, deregulated areas, and with the sort of co-ops and municipal utilities too. So, very interesting, lots of complexity. But I think for Octopus, as a utility, we very much don't see electric vehicles as a threat, but potentially one of our biggest opportunities and a really transformational opportunity for utilities. In the last 5 to 10, maybe more years of utilities. EVs and smart load are at the heart of our strategy, and they offer a great opportunity, firstly, to broaden and deepen our engagement with customers. To create a new source of value rather than just looking at cost-cutting measures. We think that we can get more value from engaging with low-carbon technologies. And finally, packaging all of this up and offering this load as a service to the grids and networks that we interact with. So I'm going to talk through who we are, some of our learnings, and basically the upshot of this is, how I learned to stop worrying and love electric vehicles. So if we can go on, if we just skip the next, done the introduction. So if we go on to the next slide. So I'll just say a few words about the Octopus Energy Group. Maybe if we go on to the next slide, who we are. So our overriding vision is using technology to drive the global green energy revolution. We want to make this cheaper, faster for people and the planet. So our mission writ large is energy revolution. And we do this by a really strong focus on technology. Next slide. So we're a relatively new company. We got our start in 2016, and we've been focused on building an integrated post-transition energy company. So since 2016, we're now live in 27 countries. We have 7.7 million utility customers on the retail side, 7,000 employees. Our Kraken, the group's Kraken technology platform, has 54 million domestic customer accounts contracted. And we have $7 billion of renewable assets under management. Next slide. So I won't spend too long dwelling on this, but basically we looked and asked, what are the important vertical areas for a post-transition energy company? So, that includes stuff like generation, obviously retail, and services as well. So the services piece is all about kind of installing new customer low carbon technologies in homes. I think generation and retail are probably fairly obvious to the audience, so I won't dwell there. Now, all of this is powered by our Kraken technology business. So this is the tech that's working in the back end, and that allows us to provide, good customer service to our customers at a lower cost to serve. So, that Kraken piece is being licensed to other utilities apart from Octopus, but it's part of the broader group. We go on to the next slide. So these are our 27 countries. We are live with activities in Canada and the US. We have our own retail utility in Texas, as well as Europe and parts of Asia as well. Next slide. So Octopus has grown really rapidly over the last 6-7 years since our founding. So we started out, as a new entrant, tried to tackle the big energy companies and outcompete them. And this has been our growth journey. So we've now, in a very short space of time, got to a point where we are the largest supplier of UK domestic electricity accounts. How we've managed to achieve this is by a relentless focus on our customers. We've been trying to kind of get our own costs down so that we can pass on lower costs to our customers. And the focus on technology, as well as, kind of the future of energy, those have been three pillars that really have underpinned this growth. Go on to the next slide. So we're replicating this around the world. So, we now, we're sort of also experiencing this rapid growth curve in some of our international markets as well, across Japan, Spain, Germany, other European markets, and it's a similar story in the US as well. Next slide. Just to say, I won't dwell too much on this, but just to say, Kraken is the software platform that we use that powers all of this. So there are a few different components that do different things. The customer powers our utility operations. The flex side is where we interact with individual assets and we make them controllable. The grid piece is about kind of what's going on big networks and providing better visibility and monitoring to grid owners. And then field is an enabling platform for installing, low carbon technology in homes. So this is the sort of tech platform that sits behind everything that we're doing. But it runs essentially as a separate business that also licenses all of these things to other businesses. Next slide. Okay, so that's who we are. I think I think everybody here is very pleased with what we've achieved, but essentially now we've gone from being a sort of a new entrant, like disruptor, tiny energy company really. And now we're one of the largest energy companies across the whole of Europe. We've had a lot of investment from people like Al Gore's Generation Investment Management, as well as a couple of strategic investors as well. And our valuation is just under $8 billion. So really, we're coming to this piece as we are now sort of stepping into becoming a major energy company. And so just to give a bit of a context on the sort of international view there. All right, so shifting to Intelligent Octopus, let's go on to the next slide. So this webinar is about smart charging and how to make EV fleets controllable. But to start from the context that a lot of people will be familiar with, the energy system is changing because customers are changing. So not only are customers starting to get technologies in homes like electric vehicles, heat pumps, more use of AC, solar and storage, all of these things are big energy devices that can put pressure on your utility operations and put pressure on the networks. So that the customer technology is changing, but also who customers are is changing as well. So we see a much stronger motivation for climate and green technology today than we've seen at any point in the last 5 to 10 years. And also the way that customers interact with utilities is changing. So gone are the days of, sort of send a bill once a month in the post. Like, customers want to be able to do everything online, everything through apps. And so that really changes the relationship that a utility has to its customers. So that's all important context. Next slide. The upshot of this is that the customer load curve is fundamentally reshaping because of all of these technologies. So you have a fairly standard load curve with a morning and an evening peak. You add solar to get the good old duck curve. Next slide. Then you throw in a bit of electric heating, perhaps, so that kind of increases your peaks in the morning and the evening. Next slide. And then if you add an unmanaged EV on top, that hits in the evening. And then suddenly, next slide, you have this completely reshaped energy curve. And by the way, this curve looks completely different on any single day of the week. And then one customer looks completely different to their neighbor a few doors down. So the whole essence of predicting and forecasting is getting a lot more difficult. And then, as many of you will know, if every single customer on the same street gets an EV, then some of these effects start to exacerbate, and that's when we all worry about blowing up transformers and all of that stuff. So if we move on to the next slide. The story across the world is that there are 130 million of these devices coming. This is a trend that's happening in every single country. The number of EVs in the US, for example, is going to be 8 times higher in 2030 than it was in 2023. The interesting thing is, across each of these technologies, from EVs, solar, storage, the smallest increase is a doubling, and then some other technologies are going to rocket on up from there. So this is something that needs an answer. Next step. So the problem is that this unmanaged load puts pressure on networks, it drives costs up, and if customers don't have good offers, they're going to be very unhappy with the service. Next slide. You can click through. There's one more click here as well. So if we take, I don't want to. I lived in California for a couple of years, so I don't want to sort of rag on California too much, but you can start to see these sorts of headlines. I mean, this was just one single month apart. We got California both banning the sale of new gasoline cars, but then EV customers almost straight away being asked to limit their charging. So, this is a suboptimal customer experience. Next slide. Okay, so the opportunity here is dispatchable, controllable demand. This is the answer to those problems for utilities, for customers, for networks. Next slide. So we are coming to this from a point of view where we now have 145,000 smart devices under our direct control. We're just about to cross the 150,000 device mark, and we are just shy of 1 gigawatt of controllable load. And just to point out that this is load that we have under direct active management through dynamic optimization. So this excludes time of use tariffs. This excludes kind of incentive programs and critical peak pricing and the whole range of measures. This is just devices that are being dynamically optimized and controlled over the air. So next slide. For Octopus as a utility, we have a long history of activating consumer flexibility, and we think there are basically 3 different types. So on the one hand, tariff-led. On the second hand, campaigns and more kind of one-off types of flexibility. And then on the third hand, automated. So let's just dive into that. Okay, so this is our tariff-led flexibility. So just to explain here, this is a heat pump tariff we launched called Cozy Octopus. So Cozy Octopus customers get a cheap rate in the early morning, a cheap rate in the late afternoon, and then an expensive on-peak rate during that evening peak. So the big idea here is we want to encourage customers to preheat, to shift their electric heating into times when underlying costs and grid stress is lower. And basically, the result of all this is 45% of the customer's total demand moved into target periods without impacting heating performance, without customers getting too cold, and the heat pumps ran fine. So, so this is a great example. Customers do respond to price signals. Next slide. We've also ran manual campaigns. This is customers responding to grid signals. So the network gave us a signal and said, can you turn down between 5 and 6 p.m. later on today? And what we did was we emailed customers, and what you can see is we got some really big sort of load shifts that came out of that. By the way, customers loved this. So last year we had 700,000 customers signed up. This year we had 1.5 million customers sign into this thing, and over 1 million customers participated in one or more events. So really great customer uptake, and really illustrates the point of the need for good customer propositions. Next slide. So that sort of tariff-led and manual behavioral demand response, and I want to talk about automation now. So I think these things, tariff and behavioral, these are good stepping stones, but ultimately, there are some drawbacks as well. So for instance, time of use pricing can lead to herding effects, where you have a lot of people trying to do the same thing at once. So, if your off-peak rate starts at 1 in the morning, 1 a.m., then suddenly everybody's going to start their EV charging at 1 a.m. So you haven't removed the grid, the transmission distribution issue. You've kind of focused it in some ways. So this is kind of what lays the groundwork for automation and dynamic optimization. So we have launched, starting in January 2020, we have launched our Intelligent Octopus suite of products. And we have different flavors of this, whether you're looking to do EV smart charging, whether you have a home battery. So this shows a screen of stuff that's going on, the solar and storage going on in the home, or whether you're trying to do AC, heating and hot water. And that's a screen from from that kind of tariff. Next slide. So the first part of this is a full app-based experience. That's very important. So customers can sign on and join this tariff purely through their mobile device, and they interact with this on their mobile. So on the left-hand side, this is our onboarding journey, where it's a very easy journey. You sort of log on and you start the switch, and then we ask you what devices you have in the home. And then the second screen shows the kind of registration. So maybe you're registering your Tesla, you've got a 7 kilowatt charger, and then you do a test. You authenticate the device, and then you do a test. So we know that we can control the device. And then on the third screen, we have a very simple customer experience and interaction. So all the customer has to do when they're up and running is specify how much charge they need and when they need the charge ready by. And what we do is we take those inputs and run them through the optimizer, and then come up with a personalized charging schedule for that customer. So the customer gets to see, and then if they're not happy with it, or if they need it sooner, they can override it. Now, at the PLMA symposium last year, a lot of the discussion was, how do you get customers comfortable with this? And the answer is, it's all about building trust and providing customers a good level of information, letting them know what you're planning to do, letting them know what you actually did, and then giving them the override switch. We found that this is enough to get customers comfortable and trusting that the devices are going to do what they said they would do. So once the customer tries this, then it's very quick to make that switch once they've tried it to adjust their customer behavior. Next slide. Okay, and the benefits are a massive increase. So we are live in both regulated and deregulated market environments. This comes from the UK, which is deregulated market, but according to different price volatility, the difference between a customer standard rate, which is about 26p per kilowatt hour, and the smart charging rate, the smart charging rate is almost 5 times less expensive than the standard rate. And that's because we're able to access those lower cost types of wholesale. Similar picture in Texas, where we have a utility, arguably even more. But for regulated utilities, there is a benefit as well of being able to control this load and stop it from impacting their grid in a negative way as well. Next slide. Okay, so this is all powered by an incredibly complex optimization engine, which the customer, importantly, never sees. So we're not trying to bombard the customer with energy markets chat. We're not bombarding them with advanced optimization and machine learning, though we have a lot of that in the background. It's all about making the simplest customer experience available to the customer. So what we're doing in the background is we have a 4-step optimization process where we forecast inputs, whether that's grid signals, constraints, customer preferences, customer demand behavior, and then we set parameters according to what's important in the area we're deploying it. We then calculate the optimal behavior, so that might be least cost charging or like responding to live grid needs, and then we execute over the air. So you don't need to install any software. This all works with vehicle APIs. Next slide. So there is a range of different inputs from customer behavior to sort of market factors to technical that go into this optimization. Next slide. And this shows kind of, this sort of evolves, the understanding of how the optimization works. So there's a trigger that starts the whole process. That might be a signal from the network. It might be a market signal, or it might be when the customer plugs in the car. And this can re-optimize very quickly and very dynamically. And then all of these inputs are filtered into the optimization. You come out with a charging plan. Really important learning on the customer experience is we will always prioritize the customer need, because ultimately, the second a customer wakes up in the morning and their EV is not ready to go, or their home's too cold, or their home's too hot, that's the point where you lose the customer. So it's an absolute priority that the customer has the service they need. Next slide. Okay, so this is one for the sort of the more nerdy optimization experts out there on the call. So we've implemented through Kraken, through our technology platform, we've implemented a solution called fleet level optimization, which we think is pretty much first of kind technology. Now, how simple optimization works is you take the signals in and then you instruct each individual EV to follow those signals. So that means that, more or less, if every EV has the same need, then they do exactly the same thing. Okay, that's the simple form. Now, what that prevents you from doing is sometimes, if you're a utility, you might want to put a cap on the total amount of charging in any given half hour, so you don't impact the network. Or you might want to reduce your consumption during critical peak times by 20 megawatts to hit a reserve need or another requirement. Now, it's very hard to do that using a simple optimization because you have to kind of instruct a bunch of cars differently. And what the fleet level optimizer has enabled us to do as Octopus is it sort of calculates that need of the X megawatts reduction or the X megawatts cap, and then it figures out what that means for each EV individually while still making sure that they're charged. And that's fleet level optimization. That's how it works. Absolutely key piece of the technology, for serving grids. Next slide. Okay, and then the final piece, another piece of this is kind of how the customers interact with it on top of the automation. So we've been trialing a system of nudges to encourage customers to plug in on lower CO2 days so that they can have a lower CO2 intensity of their charging. We've had a really positive customer response. People really like this because a lot of EV drivers are still driven by the CO2 intensity. So this has reduced our carbon by 6%, and actually, funnily enough, also reduced our energy costs. So there's a lot of, this is just a way that we're kind of experimenting and evolving our customer offers. Next slide. Okay, and this is an example of the optimization in practice from So the light blue, just to explain what's going on here, the light blue line shows the total charging power of plugged-in electric vehicles. So this is your sort of charging potential. The red line shows your optimization signal, and then the dark blue line shows actual charging behavior. So basically what you can see is we have a really good kind of correlation or inverse correlation between the times of lower prices or lower signal and the EVs responding to that. Next slide. Sorry, actually, if we go back a slide, just to change up the instructions, just keep Rich on his toes. So this is kind of, there are a couple of like pretty clever things in the background here. So one is, this red signal is an aggregate of markets and markets, grid signals, anything. So this can continually evolve. It's also something that allows our control room, our dispatchers, our markets team to trade on this information. So this is a forecast that's used in production by real people in the utility to help lower costs and respond to real conditions. The other thing is, this represents a continuous learning process. So over time, as more and more customers are on the program, we are learning from the way they use the tariff and their needs, the times that they typically plug in and plug out, and how much charging they need as well. And we're creating different segments of customers to help us understand better forecast behavior. So that's another piece as well. Okay, next slide. So we've had a really good start. I think our average monthly growth rate from January 2022 to today is over 20% every single month. And then next slide. But we're just getting started. So we've got big ambitions. We're dreaming big, and the EV revolution is happening now. So we're targeting 1 million devices in the next 2 years. We think that's completely achievable. So just to, if we go on to the next slide, just to kind of close this out before we go to questions. I think the first thing to say is, the low carbon technology revolution is happening. It almost has happened. We're still in the early innings, but it is happening today. And so this is something that utilities like us and other utilities need to be actively kind of responding to and figuring out. And how I learned to stop worry and love EVs, like it is an opportunity. It doesn't necessarily have to be a threat. So there is great opportunity there. So that's number one. I think number two is, this is probably the best opportunity for customer engagement utilities have had at any point in history. Customers love new low carbon technology, and if you can provide good products and good tariffs and good options for customers, they will form a much stronger attachment to you as a utility as well, and that's definitely what we've seen. And then the third piece is, as I mentioned, technology really is at the heart of this, and we're very lucky to work with Kraken, with their SmartFlex technology. Some of my colleagues from Kraken, I'm sure, would be more than happy to discuss deploying this. But this isn't just an Octopus solution. Like, the underlying technology is available to other market participants as well. So technology has to be at the heart of any transition here. So with that, thanks very much for your time. Real pleasure to be with you here today, and yeah, happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Kieran. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, but I will kick us off with a question or two. So, Kieran, just for clarification, do you know what percentage of your customer base is residential versus fleet?
Yeah, so a lot of our customer base is residential. We have some business users as well, but we are. It is quite early stages, so there's probably a limit to what I can say. But we are working with fleet owners to get this technology rolled out with fleets.
Okay. Let me see. I think there's something in the chat now. Have you observed any behavioral or communications preference differences between Americans and UK or European customers? If so, how unique is that to Texas or other states? So it's a two-part question.
Really great question. Really great question. I mean, I think that. Oh, sorry, Alison. There's a little bit of feedback. So I think customers are different wherever you go, and there are definitely unique preferences wherever you go. I think, I mean, it's, your average French customer and your average customer in Texas probably have fairly different preferences, I would venture to say. I think that we've seen, so Texas, for example, there's a strong people don't like this sense of giving up control. They don't want people in their homes interfering with their stuff. That's a very clear message. But I think what this comes down to is it's all about how you communicate to that customer. So it's sort of like, so what we'd say is, the customer never loses control, and they can override us anytime they want to. That's a key thing. It's just that if we can influence and shape and manage the charging, then we can save customers potentially quite a lot of money, but they still have the control. So the customer messaging is paramount, but there is a way to make it appealing to customers. And yeah, so that's what I say about that.
Okay, I see some more questions coming in the chat here. Here's one. What is your approach for obtaining new customers? How do you develop a high level of trust?
Yeah, so I think we've spoken a lot about customer experience today. I think we place a very high priority all along the organization on good customer service and treating customers right. So whether you're someone who's on the phones day in, day out with customer, I mean, we have an amazing customer operations team, but we always want customers to have good interactions with us, and and stay with the business and kind of talk about us favorably to other customers. So we're not looking to squeeze every last penny out of customers. I think we always try and be really responsive and quick to reply to customers where they have questions, and then the digital tools that we use sort of support that as well. So I think that has been our biggest key in driving growth and creating trust with our customers.
Okay, I'm just going to read some more out of the box here. Could you elaborate on the load management for heat pumps, for room heating and cooling and water heating?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really exciting growth area. I think the optimization is even more interesting because you start getting into like creating thermal models of people's homes. So we have air conditioning optimization that's live in Texas through smart thermostat control. And the core of how that works is when prices are spiking, we will place temporary holds on the AC. So normally this is for 15 minutes, half an hour. Customers, the temperature doesn't rise in that much time such that customers notice it, but it can make a big impact if you're running the AC through those peaks versus not. So that's just one use case. I mean, with the electric heating as well, basically it's moving to a model where a customer says how warm or cold they want to, they want to be. They'll tell us if they're feeling too hot or too cold, and we can train the model based on their understanding of what temperature is. And then, and then within that, there's a tremendous amount of scope for preheating, for temporary holds, for post-heating, and cooling as well. So really exciting growth area for us.
Okay, here's another one from the Q&A. Are the positive signals for charging EVs more frequently occurring at night or during the day?
This depends on solar penetration. Right now, so generally, unmanaged EVs can impact peaks in the evening. I think, so we're starting to see sort of like bad times to charge happen in the evening. That's when the grid is most constrained, etc. And then better times are overnight when the EVs are plugged in. I think solar penetration might change that calculus, and AC penetration as well might change that calculus. So if you have a lot of solar and not much AC, then maybe there might be an inversion where you want to charge the car in the middle of the day. If you have a lot of AC, then maybe that sort of pushes you away from those like middle of the day peak demands.
Okay, and here's another one from the chat. What are a few things outside of your control that would allow you to expand your customer base and reduce carbon emissions more quickly?
Yeah. It's sort of, at risk of giving away our utility secrets here, but don't worry, because I like you guys, I don't mind. No, but to be serious, I think there is an EV wave coming, and the same for electric heat, the same for solar and storage. Like there are these waves coming, and that is the biggest tailwind imaginable for a utility. So if you capture that, and if you come out with the right products and services at the right time, you are going to see a massive benefit in terms of customer offerings and people signing up and engaging with you. If you miss that, then that's probably one of the biggest opportunities lost. So this is going to this has already started, and it's going to keep happening, but this is a sort of like a 5-year opportunity, and then at the end of that, customers may well settle down into their kind of existing patterns. So it's all like, so making the most of EV deployment and growth right now, like that is the best thing that utilities can do to grow their books.
Okay, here, this one's a long one here. How will your customer engagement strategy need to change as EVs become mass market? That is, you mentioned that lots of EV drivers are motivated by carbon emission savings. How will you need to change your strategy around both communication and rewards when EVs become mainstream?
That's a good question. I mean, so I think the way to think about this is, what does it mean for customers when one of the biggest or one of the biggest or one of the biggest sources of demand in their home, of load in their home, is one single device that is plugged in or out variably, and is kind of largely out of the utility control. I think shaping offerings and products around that, finding ways to engage customers around the EVs, and then importantly, just making it really, really simple for customers. because this is complex. Customers don't want to hear about energy markets. They don't want to hear about like the different ISOs or the different regulated regions. Like, if you can make as simple an offering as possible that customers understand they're getting the benefits from, and that really is the name of the game.
Okay, here's another one. What is the biggest risk to keeping customers happy? And this is from Robert Rolnick. They just had a eclipse in Texas. Do these planned and unplanned shocks, including winter storms, have a particular challenges for you?
That's true. Yep. I mean the like a good question from Texas. Like that, it is no secret that the ERCOT market is incredibly challenging in terms of trading, imbalanced exposure, and all of those things. I think that managed demand does help a lot. So the higher percentage of your retail book you can manage as a utility, it helps to limit some of the exposures that you might have there. I think the broader question of keeping customers happy, I think is, making sure that the tech system and the controls are really robust, making sure that you can respond and react to customer questions or queries. That's important. And then, just I think the way that you communicate with the customer, if you've made a mistake, then being honest and open about the mistake. Those are things that have worked for us as a business.
Okay. Another one from the chat. What communications protocol do you use to connect and control the EV chargers?
It's a whole range. So generally, we like the gold standard is direct agreement API with the car manufacturers. We are engaging and looking at 15.11.8 and these different protocols. Those tend to be quite slow moving. So we work with a range of standards from direct APIs, like cloud to cloud providers, and protocols probably as a third preference in order to get the widest possible coverage quickest. At one point, there are people out there who have reverse engineered app connections to EV. At one point, these may all get sort of switched off. But I think what you want to do is kind of hit that scale as quickly as possible, and doing a broad range of integrations helps us to do that. And then you can kind of backfill some of the car OEM relationships.
Okay, here's another one. Do you foresee for some territories, for some reasons, or for some seasons, that electricity pricing can consistently be zero using your market signals to trigger usage, particularly for EVs? I don't know if you could see the question in the chat. Maybe it.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. We're starting to get wholesale pricing in multiple regions driven by solar and wind down to zero or even below zero, which is great because you get paid to charge your electric vehicle. So that's a big win-win. Obviously, in the regulated environments, the structures are a bit different. So there's less exposure to wholesale pricing.
Last question in the chat. I know some people left some questions in the Q&A. We answered that. Okay. I might have one more question.
Sure.
Since we still got time here. How much of a differentiator is customer experience?
I think customer experience is absolutely key. I think one of the points that I was trying to make fairly early on is that customers interact with any product in a different way now. So you have to think digitally, you have to think about the app experience, you have to think about the website. But those are also really great enablers of, there's a lot more information that we can present to customers, and we have much more control over how a customer experiences and feels about their interactions with us. So I think it's something that's really important to get right, but also a big opportunity for utilities, if they can do that right.
Okay, let me see. And what are the main things to think about to get started on the EV journey? What advice would you give?
There's that sort of cliche of like the best time to get started was 3 years ago. The next best time to get started is today. But I'm ashamed to use such a cliched phrase to round off. I think number one is get started. Seriously, I think there is so much. I've tried to convey, some of the tools that are available to utilities at their disposal. We have a certain set which is enabled in part by Kraken, and I think that you want to be thinking broadly and innovatively about what you can offer your customers. I think ultimately, success probably looks like quite heavily automated load. So what I would do is start thinking around like what is that end state that you're trying to get to, and how to accelerate to that as quickly as possible. In view of all of the tools that are coming through. So yeah.
Okay, so I do not see any more questions on the chat. And I just want to thank Kieran for your time. This was a really great presentation, very enlightening. And I'm going to turn it back over to Rich now. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. And thank you to Kieran Stopforth and Allison Hamilton for an excellent discussion today. And also thank all of you in the audience who did a great job interacting and adding your questions. We had a very good conversation today. For all of you who've joined us today, if you want to rewatch this discussion, we have two ways for you to do that. One is through our podcast channel. You can pick this up any place that you listen to podcasts. You're looking for PLMA's Load Management Dialogue podcasts. But also the video recording will be uploaded here in the next couple of days to our YouTube channel. You can see it down below. You look for PLMA DR YouTube channel, and this will be out there for quite a while for you to be able to rewatch or to share with other colleagues. In addition, next week, a week from today, our Women in Demand Management Affinity Group is hosting a virtual meetup. The topic is building skills for work promotions and opportunities. So week from today, same time frame, 12:30 Eastern time in the afternoon on Wednesday, April 17th. Don't miss that. It should be a great opportunity to learn and share experiences. And then, of course, we're now less than 4 weeks out from our next conference, our 49th PLMA conference in Portland, Oregon, May 6th through 8th. It's going to be time to get registered, get your hotel room locked down, all those types of things. We have over 250 people registered already. We are trending towards record attendance again. I hope to see you all there in Portland. And I want to thank everyone again for joining today. You've been listening to a Load Management Dialogue presented by PLMA. To learn about upcoming dialogues and for an archive of past recordings, visit peakload.org or your favorite podcast platform. This concludes this edition.